guess welcome to the Thursday, August 13th, Webster Town Board Workshop. We have, I think, 5 agenda items tonight, and we will start out with a discussion. Actually, what is on the agenda about the helicopter law is a misnomer, because if I understand correctly, Charlie, there is no special use permit possibility for a law.
There's no special use permit process to fly an aircraft in the town of Webster, that's correct. Or not to fly, to land or take off in the town of Webster, that's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess from a layman term, and this is just, I want to just explain semantically, if somebody wants to put a shed in their conservation easement, they can apply for a special use permit.
That would be a license agreement.
Okay, give me a special use permit. Come
Well,
on, help
special
me
use
out here.
permits are those special uses that are delineated in the town code,
Okay,
as opposed to a use variance. There are certain uses that are not permitted, and that the only way to get that use is to get a variance. The difference between a variance and a special use is a variance runs with the land, so that once you get that use variance, the entire, or not the entire, but you basically have that right forever until the use ceases.
I got it.
Okay? But a special permit is really to the person. So a special permit process would go to that particular individual.
okay. And by the way, John, these 2 minutes won't count against your 15, okay? Not going to short you, all right? But I think the importance of this is to understand that in layman terms, there is a law in the town of Webster that precludes the landing and taking off of a helicopter.
Chapter 76 of the town.
There you go. And there is no path to have a special use permit to do that based on this law. You would have to either amend the law if we were going to land in the town and take off, or you would have to have the law changed or gotten rid of.
If you want to do it lawfully and legally, yes.
Well, we would.
I'm just being specific here. Yeah.
I would like to think we would pursue things. Now, remember, as I said before, this is a workshop, free-flowing conversation. They're supposed to be fun. Mr. Kashani.
Yes.
You have a presentation to give to the board and to the people in the audience. So it's 5:33. You don't lose 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Supervisor Flaherty, members of the board. My name is John Kashani, and we just have a very short slide presentation, and thank you for the opportunity. You want me to be there? Okay. Whatever. I'm very fond of my helicopter, so I kind of like to keep them close by. Okay, I'm sorry. Does this work okay?
Yes.
Still got my 15 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. So we have a slide presentation, and without taking any more time, I'd like to start out with the purpose, I hope tonight, is to simply ask what the purpose of the Webster aviation law actually is. Thank you. And these are some posts cited by Supervisor Ron Nesbitt just within the last couple of weeks, and I really didn't want to go there, but this kind of preempted my story to come in here, and I'm not going to read these. I'm sure many of you folks already have read them, but clearly, there's been a pattern to mislead, misinform, use fear-mongering tactics to manipulate and deceive the residents of the town of Webster and this board. That's all I'll say about that. Next page, please. This is a picture, and I want to state a quote from April 17th, 2008, when former Supervisor Nesbitt was quoted in the Democrat and Chronicle stating, "Heaven forbid, but if something would happen in a residential neighborhood with all that jet fuel, a neighborhood could be lost in minutes." I point out this is a 18-wheeler rolled over, landed in a residential yard. That 18-wheeler can weigh as much as 80,000 pounds with a full load. It carries up to 400 gallons of fuel. Did a little calculation and double-checked it more than once. At a low number, we have 1.6 million gallons of fuel that travel along flammable, explosive fuel that travel along Route 104 daily. In comparison, this aviation law is really about what happens when a helicopter, who has a right to fly in the airspace, comes with 0 airspeed and sets down 1 foot. Because that's what this issue is. It's the issue of, can the helicopter set down 1 foot on the owner's private property? I think I'm good with that, thank you. Okay, got my notes over here. My goodness, this is the most mystical part of the aviation law, or as it's been referred to, the helicopter law. This is an ultralight. There's an ad in Craigslist I just printed out a couple of weeks ago. I just want to point out the greatest single threat to general aviation is an ultralight. We in our town made a special carve-out, not quite sure why, but we decided this was okay to take off and land. Now let me point out a couple of things. This aircraft, no license required. You can buy them on Craigslist. You don't have to have a certified mechanic maintain something like that. In fact, you can build it at home, or you can have your friend build it at home. Or you can buy it and take it apart and modify it, put it back together again, and you can fly it over the town of Webster, and you're encouraged in the Webster helicopter law to take off and land that. It's been stated that we don't want landing strips in Webster. Got the quotes. I land in a 10-foot by 10-foot piece of property. I don't require 890 lineal feet that currently has in the town of Webster. These are required to have no radio, no transponder, no ASB. Nobody knows where they are. Yet we're taking off and we're landing, and we're saying this is good. But they can't talk with general aviation. Now there's numerous airplanes and helicopters and commercial traffic that fly over Webster every day. The greatest threat is that thing. Because when that collides with a general aviation aircraft who's abiding by all the rules, we're going to look pretty silly, stating that that was a good idea. I'll finish with that last bullet. You have a 6 times greater chance of death in that than any general aviation. Thank you. Move on. I got only a few minutes left, I'm afraid. AOPA is the Aircraft Owner and Pilots Association. I've been a member for almost 20 years. It's the largest aviation organization in the world. The Democrat Chronicle interviewed Chris Dancy back in 2008. Said, what do you think about the helicopter law? His statement was, I'm aware of 4, and now 5, towns that have created such a law since Webster was the fifth, that has actually created such a law to zone out the landing of a private helicopter. Now, folks, we have 35,000 towns and cities in this country. 5 decided we have to make a law. The others have left it up to the FAA, because the FAA very clearly is the jurisdictional body that determines the safe and efficient use of airspace as it pertains to the safety of people on the ground and of property on the ground when it comes to landing. The FAA does this. The other 4,995 other towns realize the FAA's got a handle on this. Are there going to be a lot of sites ever approved in Webster to land an aircraft? Highly unlikely. But we'll get to that later. Thank you, Chris. You can move. Just real briefly, this was just taken a couple of years ago. This is an airplane landing on Irondequoit Bay, as they routinely do. The point is that there's families out here, there's snowmobilers, there's ice fishermen, ice skaters, and, you know, it just goes on. Thanks. This is an interesting one. Does anybody know where this is? Anybody? No? Where? So this is the Sandbar Park. Come on, we gave it away over here. This is Webster property. These routinely land within the boundaries of the town of Webster. Completely illegal based on the law. The helicopter law, or Article 76, or whichever you want to call it. Not a whole lot to say about that other than you're looking at families having dinner. You're looking at revolving propellers, more noise than any helicopter makes, a seaplane can make. There's other boaters, there's fishermen, there's jet skis, there's water skiers. This is public property. See, this is where the citizens of Webster like to go. They like to go to the bay. Hundreds every weekend are on the bay. And these are landing right next to them. Thank you, Chris. We could probably move on. Actually, one more point I want to make about that. That's okay, you can move on, but my point is, I've actually contacted the Monroe County Sheriffs, the New York State Police, contacted the U.S. Coast Guard, just to satisfy my own curiosity to ask, because all these people, agencies, patrol Arundequoit Bay and the surface of Arundequoit Bay. Would you know that not one is aware of the Webster law? And not one has ever been approached by anyone in Webster to say, if you see that happen, airplane land, you know, I've always been kind of tried to be quiet about it because some of these people are my friends, but that nobody has ever been asked or told. You got to violate them. You got to bring them to court, and you got to threaten 5 years in prison. That's the law. Thank you, Chris. You already moved forward. Just real, I'm going to give everybody a copy of this presentation. There's not a whole lot to explain on this, other than these are just a few of things, accidental deaths. Some of them the town could have control over, like dog bites, 5 years, 175. Swing sets, and that's 90, it's not showing up real well. There's things, pools. We give pool permits. Everybody loves a pool. But pools kill thousands of people. And I don't know the statistic here, I should. 3,615, that's just pools. Drowning is another bigger issue. But we have accidents, and we are sworn to oath to protect our citizens. Eventually I'm going to ask where this applies. Thank you, Chris. You can move on. Thank you. Oh, you know, I'm always jumping forward. My last point on that chart, you're going to get a copy. There's 0 within 5 years. People that have been killed by a helicopter coming out of the sky and killing them in 5 years. Just like all those, you double them in 10 years. You triple them in 15 years. You can go back 35 years, there's not a soul in the United States of America that has been killed by an aircraft, by a helicopter, coming out of the sky and killing them. But yet we have spent so many numerous resources in our town for this. But it hasn't happened. But the fear has been out there. Clearly. Read the blogs. Thank you, Chris. You move forward. This is my backyard. A couple of the board members, maybe everyone, has been there to my backyard. Couple of questions. We showed where people are having dinner at a town park. People that are ice fishing. We showed all kinds of public surroundings where aircrafts land. Take a look at this. Here's me. Come in, come over here, land in this little itty-bitty spot right here, 80 feet away from my house. I take off, I turn, I go over here. I fly over no Webster properties, nor am I forced to fly over any Webster properties other than my own. Rather unique position to be in. Question is, given some of the other slides, where's the threat? Obviously, the property is undeniably well maintained. Taxes are paid. Another note, this is probably the noisiest parcel of land in the town of Webster. The noisiest. And that was determined by Gary Kleist several years ago when he was asked to get some noise decibels. I've included some of the noise decibels, will be in the packet. But the noise in my property exceed the allowable noise decibel in the town of Webster. That's what I hear every day. I'm not sure if anybody else has a house or a property or a use of their property where the noise decibel exceeds the allowable Webster decibel, but I do. Councilman Dean, we can go to this later, but you know this property. You worked there as a teenager. Can you describe what that property was years ago?
It was a landfill.
Okay, thank you. And I've maintained this landfill. And on a yearly basis, I pull dozens of tires that come up out of the ground. Concrete slabs that were dumped there. They used to be in the roads, I guess. I maintain that. I'm not sure whose responsibility it is to maintain a Webster former dump, but it's a lot of maintenance. And I do it, and it's been of no burden to the town. Thank you, Chris. You can move. This is a real nice map, and I think the couple points I want to make, I really don't have any on here, but this is the kind of thing that the FAA would look at, and probably sort of did look at when they gave me the approval back in 2004, 2 years before there was a aviation law or helicopter law. And what they would look at is proximity to, where this would take off and land. Do they have free areas that they can use to come in and out of? Find another site like that in Webster, because all the yellow, which is hundreds, including the bay, which then gets into thousands of acres of open area that I can utilize to be safe to me and my aircraft, but more importantly, to people and property on the ground. In addition to this, the blue spot is where I live, and that's where I have a hangar for my helicopter. I made the effort to talk to some of the neighbors whom are all friendly and all supportive and have no issue with a helicopter landing on my FAA-approved site, former town landfill. And that's all. You can move forward, please. I've included the signatures from the petition from the neighbors, clearly the ones that have the green home sites. Thank you, Chris. Years ago, I was asked to come into the town. I said, what should I do? And he said, well, just bring some neighbor letters and bring some supporting letters. Maybe anything from the town would be good. So I said, okay, I'll go ahead and do that. And I talked to each of these people. Ironically, they were all spoken to before there was ever a controversy. And I said, yeah, I'm John Kashani, I have a helicopter, I'd like to be friendly, I'd like to continue to be a member of the community, and I'd like to give back whenever possible. I have this helicopter, chief of police, if you could ever use it. I'm not a policeman, I don't even know how to be a police, but I know how to fly a helicopter. And by the way, side note, I'm not an amateur. I'm a commercial pilot. And I've been written in the paper as an amateur pilot by former supervisor to the point where it can't get more hurtful. I'm a commercial pilot. Each of these have all, we even got Joey Herbst here stating, we've already used Mr. Kashani's generous offer for something that benefited the town. Thank you, Joey, 20 years later. And thank you, I think we can move on from that. Just here, you'll get a copy of this. This is a copy of my FAA-approved heliport. This is a copy of my license. Doesn't say amateur, it says commercial pilot. And we can go on and on about that sort of thing, but I think everybody understands. So lastly, I just simply want to end by asking, what was the true purpose? Isn't that what we started in the beginning? What was the true purpose of the Webster Aviation Law? Was it truly intended to protect the citizens of the town of Webster? And if so, can anybody on this board, anybody please, tell me how that law, and the helicopter can fly, and the helicopter can hover, and the helicopter can be a foot off of the ground, and it can be completely legal. What did the law do? It's zero speed that somehow causes me to be in such jeopardy by setting down that foot. I asked the board. And I'm done with my presentation, so
John, I gotta tell you, I'm impressed, having known you for many years, being in the mortgage business and development. 17 minutes. I'm impressed, because I didn't know if you could do it that quick.
I owe that to Chris, who made this for
Nicely
me
done.
and said, John, you're never gonna make it.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that that presentation will be available for the board members. And thank you for coming in and giving that impassioned presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
And I'd like to hand out these to the board. I also didn't have it in the presentation, if I could have another half a minute. In the blog by former supervisor, there was a statement that said the law was made because of the complaints that people had for a helicopter landing on Sundance Trail. And remember, years ago was said, get some letters from your neighbors. You know, come on in, just get some letters from your neighbors. I have letters from the 5 closest neighbors. I have pictures of their houses, and ironically, Google Earth was taking pictures the day my helicopter was in my backyard. Take a look at that helicopter. It looks tinier than the car that's out here. Can anybody look at that and say, how could that take out a whole neighborhood? The fear-mongering statement, God forbid. So I have this, it wasn't part of the presentation, and I have the presentation, and I thank you all very much for the opportunity to come here tonight.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
And
Thank you.
I don't know if it was your desired intent, but you know what caught my eye about this is that maybe the board needs to look, what are those things called, the planes?
Seaplanes.
What are they called?
Seaplanes.
No, not those.
The ultralights.
Ultralights!
Yeah.
I thought that was beer that had less calories and carbs, Barry.
Well, that's because you're
Um,
a beer drinker.
That's interesting. I hope you don't, that's what I took away, is that we might not want those
I
in
have
town,
very
but
good
anyway.
friends
Anyway.
in the FAA that are furious about this type of aircraft because they can't control it. They can't regulate it.
Yeah.
And they do pose a great threat. The most dangerous aircraft known to man has been looked at by Webster as special cargo. This is good. You can take off and land. What causes that? It's not good sense.
Well, and
It's
you know
not
what, and
statistics.
John, I appreciate, I will say this,
I'm going over
it's why there's a law that's from 2004, there's a lot of things we're looking at in town saying codes and whatever, should they be augmented and whatever, and that ultralight thing, that catches my attention. And that's the way government works, is you change things when it doesn't make sense anymore. I don't like an ultralight from the sounds of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
And John, you never looked as good with that tie on, I gotta tell you, you
I'm
know.
gonna keep it.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Bert.
Well,
You got one for me?
Of course.
I'm gonna catch up to our schedule because it's 5:53. And I wanted to tell the board, a little bit about where we're at, in late August, and the project that I've been talking about pretty much since the day I came in is that, how do we, as a government, as a board, properly communicate to the 15,000 households in Webster? I know that Councilman Dean, you at one time, I can't remember, said it's always been a challenge, is that we can't get our message out and get it to, out to 15,000 people. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I just wanted to give the board an update, and then if they have any questions or they have any comments. So I tried to make it fun. I was going to give you a handout. I call this my dirty dozen. These are the 12 ways that I'm hoping that we will develop a robust communication mechanism in the town where we feel as though by utilizing all 12 of these, that at least one of the means of communication will be received and absorbed by the recipient. And I can't stress enough absorbed, because people will get communications from us, but if they don't really absorb it and read it and whatever, then it's useless. So, in no particular order, I know this, it's not going to be an effective way for this government and board to communicate with the community going door to door, and probably not via phone. A little labor intensive, we got bad knees, a lot of reasons for that. So here's my 12. I'm going to start with the Webster Herald, because the Webster Herald somewhat ties into the law that is in place now, and Charlie, you would be best to describe it, that years ago they said if you're going to do public hearings, if you're going to do open meetings, you have to publish them in the local rag. I don't think that's how they describe it.
They don't exactly use that term.
Yeah, you know.
That's the sense.
Record, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a local, if a local paper exists, if a local weekly paper exists within the boundaries of the jurisdiction, then yes, you have to use that. So, yeah, but that's basically, and this has been an issue for some time, basically the law lags behind technology.
Right, and that's, we're going to fight the battles we can.
The law says you have to publish it in a newspaper.
Right, and I'm not looking to change that law. It would take too much energy, so we just got to live with that. And the reality is, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, that might have reached half the households or maybe more. It doesn't anymore. And, I feel for the Webster Herald and for all the papers that put out a paper copy of the newspaper, because it is just something that is a dwindling subscription rate. So the Webster Herald is still a good way for us to reach, I think, probably about 10% of our 15,000 households. Just in the first 8 months, Kim Doyle in the supervisor's office and I have garnered over 1,700 emails, over 10 email addresses. Right now, we're getting them from people emailing into us with questions, this and that, and we're keeping this database, and sooner or later we got to sit down with Charlie and with Karen and in communications and figure out, well, how can we use these emails? Because obviously that's a sensitive topic. You got to make sure you don't go off half-cocked. We're also getting cell phone numbers from this. Cell phone numbers, a lot of people will be more apt to absorb a text with a link than they will an email. Same conversation I just had about emails. We have to figure out how to do that and make sure we're being legal, but also communicative. 4, Facebook. That's something that Karen has worked on and is getting, COVID has somewhat helped us, believe it or not, because we've gotten more subscribers in the last 6 months to Facebook. I've made it very clear that my philosophy on Facebook and social media is it should have 2 aspects to it. We inform and we're positive. I think we all know that a lot of people use social media for different reasons than that. Twitter. I'm an old guy. I don't know how to tweet, but I know that it's an effective way to communicate, and we should maximize that. The town website. That's the 6th one. I think that spawns off of that, and Karen would be better to comment on this, but Karen can't do 2 jobs at a time, produce this show and also present, is the alerts. Citizens sign up for email and text alerts, and we've had a real increase in that since COVID too, and that's good. Whether those alerts are weather related or just various happenings in town that mandate an alert. Joe, in the highway, I think there's certain alerts that spawn off of that. Is that correct? Thank you. Yes, he was bobbing his head yes, for those that... The Town Times. This is a publication that historically has gone out 3 or 4 times a year to all the houses in Webster. We are in the process right now of revamping it and seeing how that works. Actually, Charlie has helped on this from a standpoint of, can we get some of the cost defrayed by advertisers? Webster businesses that might want their business promoted to 15,000 households. But there's a legal aspect to that, isn't there, Chad?
Right, yeah, so
There's a legal aspect to everything, isn't there? But along with the town times, I call that a paper-generated communication. We found out during the mask distribution events back in May that the senior communities here in Webster have monthly or bi-weekly or whatever newsletters. A lot of the seniors love these newsletters from their community. I'd like to see the town get into that monthly and bi-weekly newsletter as a means to communicate to those seniors that often don't really like to use Facebook or Twitter or whatever. The 9th is the rec center digital board. Does everybody know this? When you go by the rec center and chat or whatever, there's a board that you can put messages on. People have said to me, boy, you should put more messages on there about town events, not just the rec. And I do want to look to see if once we get the sidewalks here on Ridge Road, if there's an opportunity to maybe put something like that in front of Town Hall. I'm sure there's right-of-way and easements and all sorts of things, but it is a billboard. And people drive by it, and if there's ways that we can promote things, then we should. 10, I'm almost done with my 12. I found out there's an a number of clubs in this town. Boards, clubs, whatever, Friends of Webster Trails, the Knights of Columbus, the Elks, the this, the that, the this, the that. If we got our communication out to their leaders, they would distribute it out to their members, email, whatever. It's one way to get our message out. Public meetings, number 11. COVID really took the wind out of my sails on this. We had our first one, and only one, on February 27th. I think, Joe, was it at Schrader or Thomas for the water level? It was at Thomas. Over 200 people there. Wasn't the greatest put together performance of all time, and I take responsibility for that. It was thrown together quickly, but it was a winner. It got 200 citizens from town in a venue to talk about a pertinent town issue. Pre-COVID, and I was really excited to try to build on that momentum to see if we could do 3 or 4 of those a year based on pertinent topics. COVID. We'll see when the world gets better. And last but not least of this dirty dozen is what whoever is here tonight or watching live stream or watching, I don't think these are on the cable network, the workshops, is these town board meetings. These are public. These are, live streamed. They're on our website. This is a chance for the public to interact with the town government every single Thursday, except for the 5th Thursday of a few months. As Bill, Councilman Abbott was saying here earlier, we don't get a lot of people that attend these things, even in non-COVID times. And that's sad. But hopefully, as we move forward and maximize the 11 other means of communication I just described, it might have a byproduct that the 12th means, which is these formal board meetings or this informal one, will have increased attendance in the room when COVID ends, but also increased attendance of either watching if it's taped in the future and, or if it's live streamed. Certainly the formal board meetings are the 1st and 3rd Thursday of each month. The 2nd and 4th Thursday, these workshops, that's still up in the air of how we will handle them once the open meeting law softening from the governor ceases. So, Bill, I said we'd catch up. It's now 6:04. I didn't catch up, did I? Does any of the board members or anybody have any questions, comments on that?
I like the alerts myself, personally. They kind of, right out of my cell phone, I get it from the police department, the highway, just anything that is available for the alerts, I get them.
How difficult was it to sign up for it?
Well, it's pretty easy. If I could do it, anybody could do it.
Well, John, I didn't
I'm just saying, I'm a little older than you are. Do you still have a flip phone? Just out of curiosity.
what's wrong with flip
You
phones?
open the door.
I have a landline.
Is it a rotary? have a party line home, don't you?
Patty, save us, please. Say something intelligent.
I'm gonna stay out of this.
Okay.
That's the
No,
most,
seriously,
that's the
though.
most intelligent thing I can
It
do
is.
right now.
I signed up for the alerts last year, and I really
Well,
like them.
and I was gonna say, I actually, well, it depends on the alert. If it's something I really need to know about, great. But I don't care for getting alerts on my phone. I sometimes just wanna take my phone and hide it, because I'm tired of it talking and beeping and everything else at me. But the beautiful thing about a Dirty Dozen list is it gives people options
Right.
on how they want to receive their information. So I think that the more options we can give people, the better. I have recently signed on with Twitter, and I actually get a lot of information there. So to me, that's a good source.
She's the
But-
coolest board member by far.
But other people would really prefer to just look at the Herald
Yeah.
or find, your supervisor's column, or some people really appreciate the Town Times, and I'm sure there's many people out there going like, well, where is it?
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are also a lot of households where it went right to the recycle bin without looking at it. So, it's good to have a lot of options. I'm just gonna leave it there.
I agree.
Also. Bill?
Whatever we can do to get the message out, we try to do. And we're human beings, we can only do so much. If the residents don't want to find a way to get the information, we can't shove it down their throats.
I am going to take the same line as Bill, just with a little twist to that. How I envision this in a year, if we maximize those 12, is that when a citizen says to me, you guys aren't transparent or whatever, I'm going to be able to stand there and look them in the face and say, that's BS. You just don't want to see it. Because we are, short of knocking on your door and grabbing you by the throat, we are using every means possible. And I call it the trap, and I learned this in my business career, is that it's very common that human beings think, well, I like to be communicated with through Facebook, so the way we should communicate is really put everything into Facebook. Well, a certain part of the population will absorb and get their news that way. But like Patty said, she doesn't like the alerts. John does. But Patty likes the Twitter. We're all different. And you can't even pick it out. I've seen some 80-year-old people that like Twitter. And I've seen some 20-year-old people that like the Webster Herald, which is exactly the opposite of what you would think. So we need to get that message out in all those means, because if we tag on to just one way of doing it, first of all, we're talking in an echo chamber. We're really talking with and communicating to the same type of person who likes getting communication the same way. And that's really we're not doing our job representing the whole town.
It's a major source of frustration, getting out to the people. And if anybody out there has a suggestion of how we can do it better, you're welcome to bring it to us,
Thank you, Barry. Yes.
because we really do try. I think we've tried everything we can think of, but I'm sure there's other ideas out there. If there aren't any, let us have them.
Yeah. All right, well, it didn't quite catch us up, but I thought it important to just give an update on that, because it's a work in progress. Rome wasn't built in a day, and there's a lot more to do, but the goal is that we will have an informed community as best we can as time goes on. Now, our third topic tonight, we have in the House Chief Joe Rieger and Lieutenant Brad Fosdick, as they enter us into a discussion on body cams for the police department.
Yeah, so thank you for inviting us. Obviously, Lieutenant Brad Fosdick with me, who's been looking for fiscally responsible solutions to our body camera project. I
Joe,
know-
can you pull the microphone a little closer, please? Hello? Thank you. So I know, as you know, I've been budgeting body-worn cameras for the past couple of years. Recent events around the country have demonstrated that now more than ever, there's a need for these cameras. I believe these cameras play an important role when it comes to building police-community relations and supporting police transparency. Some of the other benefits
of the body-worn cameras are aided in intelligence gathering, creating real-time record of police interactions with the community, recording of statements, collection of documentation, evidence at police scenes which can be later used in courts. One of the biggest benefits I see with these cameras, however, is offering protection of allegations of police misconduct. These false allegations of misconduct can be quickly investigated with these cameras, thus helping to ease police community tensions. My officers go out every day to protect our community with honesty and integrity. These cameras will have the capability to document the real-time officers' interactions with our community.
Thank
Are
you.
there-
You're welcome.
Are there, what's the percentage of police departments that have body cameras now?
In Monroe County, many of the agencies do have them. Town and village police agencies have those. I don't have the statistic
Okay.
nationally.
All right. If it's
They are
not-
expensive.
Yeah, but it's my understanding when you talk about expensive, the investment in the cameras themselves is an expense, but then the maintenance of keeping the footage of what's on those cameras becomes expensive as well. Do I understand that
That's
correctly?
correct. The storage is what seems to be what's most costly with the project.
Are there guidelines as to how long things that needs to be stored?
There are some guidelines, depending if you need it for evidence or if you just need it. I know Lieutenant Fosdick had some of the information with timelines, but you can put that in your policy as to how long those things are kept. So
I'm thinking there's probably laws around that, not just guidelines.
the guidelines, our education law does dictate some of that, so yes.
As far as the operation of the cameras when the officers are actually wearing them, do they have the option to stop and start, or are they constantly on?
They're not constantly on, so per policy, we would expect, policy would be that they'd have it on when they're having a police community interaction.
Okay.
The policy hasn't been set yet. We're still in the phase of purchasing the cameras.
So with that,
That was great.
there is an MOU schedule, retention schedule for the video, and that cycles through. So obviously, major crimes like a homicide, we would hold on to that video indefinitely.
Right.
But for a normal traffic stop with no negative interaction, that might be held for 30 to 60 days. So that video, depending on what it is kind of purging itself every month. So that helps with the actual retention.
So, for example, you pull someone over, does the camera start rolling when you exit the car to approach the car that you pulled over?
Yeah, the officer would turn it on
Okay.
before they got out of the car.
Okay. Do you have dash cams?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Is that storage something that's done internally, or is it in a
It's cloud-based.
server, cloud-based?
Now, we had discussions about grants and funding for the purchase of the cameras. Do you have any updates on that, any of that?
There's no available grants
Okay.
at this moment for body cameras. So I've kind of narrowed down to a couple vendors. And one of the vendors that I'm really zeroed in on, the first year cost is about $19,000.
Okay.
And that's with all the hardware, and that's for the first year of storage. After that, every year, it's about $7,700 a year for storage, for that cloud storage.
And how many cameras is that?
That's for 18 cameras.
Okay, so all our officers.
Obviously, we have more officers, but 18
Right.
cameras should be more than enough to cover, 2 shifts.
Okay.
And any thoughts of how long these cameras last?
They'll, from what I'm told, 5 years is a good time to start cycling them out. So, if you're looking at a 5-year cost, we're looking at around $50,000 total.
Elder Bragg?
No, good.
I'm their liaison, I know all this stuff.
That's right. I guess I should say that, I think it was a couple months ago, within a few weeks after the Memorial Day incident in Minneapolis, that I was down meeting with Lieutenant Fosdick and Chief and Lieutenant Thomas. And, yeah, this is like, yeah, guys, I mean, I feel for you right now. It's tough to be under that, eye of the society right now, or, the actions of somebody in Minneapolis is all of a sudden being painted on all of you in blue. It's not fair. And it's funny because that conversation, I just assumed, as a civilian, that police officers might take it as an affront and be insulted at the thought of having to wear a body cam. And Chief Rieger and Lieutenant Fosdick and Lieutenant Thomas said quite the contrary in 2020, put them on us. And I'm paraphrasing what they said to me that day at that meeting, but they said, we know we're professional. We know when we make a stop, it doesn't matter if the person is tall, short, woman, man. We're going through our progressions that we've been trained on. And we think that body cams showing the full interaction and not just some cell phone that was the last 30 seconds would exonerate us and prove our professionalism. And, to me, that was the day I said, wow, that was a surprise to me. And they went into further explanation that might have been the initial reaction 10, 15 years ago, maybe by, when it was first came out, or the older cops and all that. But now as society has changed, and the young kids, and I say kids on the force, they grew up with phones and cameras and all that. It did make sense to me that, well, sure, you would want that. So I said, in more words or less, guys, go out and start researching it. I told the board, I told these guys to go start looking at it. And you have, and I think we've been relatively pleasantly surprised that the cost wasn't as much as we had thought. Because in the last couple of years' budgets, we budgeted $100,000 for body cams, but it was kind of a throwaway budget number because we had on the other side a $100,000 grant. So you're never going to get the $100,000 body cams unless you get the $100,000 grant. And as Lieutenant Fosdick said, to the best of our knowledge, there is no grants out there. But you really had never done the deep dive research with the two main vendors that you have started to do now to find out, well, it's not $100,000. It's actually what you just described, Brad, which is, $18,000, $19,000 year one, and then the next 4 years at like $8,000. So,
To your point, I'm sorry. I didn't
that's, it's just.
So I think we're all aware that the point you're making about police officers, especially in Webster, kind of welcoming that. I think we've seen numerous examples of body cams that came out post negative social media portrayal of a stop that essentially exonerated police officers. And I know our police officers in Webster are extremely professional. And I think it's something that they want, and we should come up with a funding stream to provide that. And I think we have the ability at some point to look at some funding streams to do this.
Well, it is an expense. I don't think it's a matter of a want. I think it's more of a matter of necessity. I think this is something that many years ago probably wasn't desirable by many officers. I think now they're all clamoring for it.
Yeah, I agree.
And to help them do their jobs, and it's part of the cost of providing the service.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
I don't have anything more to add to that. I agree with Councilman Dean. I think it's the way things have progressed in the evolution of law enforcement. And we all know that law enforcement is not an inexpensive venture in this town, but it is a service that our citizens have told us time and time again they appreciate.
Yes.
Well, I know this, I mean, you know, we got a lot of calls and emails in the last couple of months from Webster citizens, and it's a sign of the times. Some were like, you better not be thinking one iota of defunding the police. That's the new term these days, right?
Right.
And that was great for me to be able to get back, no, we have not. We have not talked about that. Where other people on the other end of the spectrum said, you should, you know, this is the opportunity to defund the police. And I said, actually, it's interesting. We're talking about investing more in them. And at first, people were angry at me, like, what do you mean? And then I explained your paraphrase answer of, if we get body cam, if we know we're professional, this would, you know, most of those people who started out somewhat angry and were coming at it from, you know, riding the tide of incited craziness in society, once it was explained to them why we were thinking of it, they said, well, that actually makes a lot of sense and makes me feel better, you know, about what type of law enforcement we have in town. So it's interesting. I guess it gives me some faith in mankind that we just totally haven't gone off the rails in society, where you can't bring some rational conversation back to people. But I hope you guys, you know, keep doing the research. I know we've had some preliminary discussions. You guys are aware this is a crazy budget time this year with all the uncertainties, and I've appreciated that you're looking at other ways to maybe get that 19,000 for 2021. And I appreciate that, because it's tough to add anything onto the 2021 budget right now when we're still trying to figure out what 2020 is going to be. So this will be an ongoing thing, but it's one that if you keep doing the legwork and we keep meeting, I don't think it's out of, well, I don't know what it takes to turn time to buy them, to get trained, all that stuff, but if everything falls into place and it's a budget neutral and whatever for 2021, I haven't heard anything from you guys that says it's not possible you'd be hitting the ground running in 21 with your officers wearing it. And I think we've talked about the fact this is one of these, you can't be half pregnant. You either wear them 100% of the time or you don't have them at all. I think we all agree on that. So.
Okay.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
guys.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks,
for your
guys.
time. Thank you.
Chief, Lieutenant. All right. Actually, Tony, are you here to kind of give a little color to this next topic?
Since that happens in the year, I'm really for that too. That was just, I don't know what your list is.
Yeah, the discussion on the third-party study for senior housing status as a.
That project you were planning for.
Would you, if you wouldn't mind, do you mind going up to only because Tony, I've given the board your letter to me dated June 2nd, where you had said the board may want to consider, of course I can't find it right now. I have it, Danny, I'm sure yep.
You don't really need it. It's basically the intent of that letter. I had a discussion with our board in regard to the project on Publishers Parkway for senior housing that they came in with. And my personal feeling was we've got a lot of them, and do we need more? My fear is down the road, in a year, 2, 3 years, there's going to be a request to say we have too many empty buildings. Seniors are not occupying them all, so therefore we need to create a different type of housing here. So to eliminate that, my feeling is we should be looking into this, have a study done, and when I suggested it to the engineering firm that was here, he said, oh, we can do that. I said, no, I want to have somebody else do it, an outside concern. You know, you can make reports what you want them to be.
Yes.
So I felt more comfortable with an outside concern. That was why I requested that from you guys to, proceed and follow through with that. Have an outside firm do a study on feasibility. Do we need more senior housing? I mean, you see ads, right now they're advertising empty places right in town here. So that's the fear I have. Do we end up with too many? We put more and then we end up using them for other purposes.
Right.
So that was the intent of
Yes.
this whole thing. So the call's yours, you guys can
Well,
make the
two
decision.
things. One, on a lighter note, Tony, I mean, is it maybe because you being as young as you are, you're against seniors? Is that possible?
They just bug heck out of me.
Do they really? Okay.
I don't even
You're
remember
not
when I became a
representative of the
senior.
senior community.
What's that?
I don't think you're representative of the senior community, so I don't know if you can really have a dog in the fight with
Well,
senior housing.
Actually, I think he
Take
is
myself out of the picture for a minute, but seriously though, I think it's something that needs to be reviewed.
Yeah, I agree.
I just don't want to see us approving a project over there. Obviously, they were shooting for the moon with the particular project, but to have another housing development for seniors come in, and then we say in a couple of years, we've got too many of them and we need to,
Well, and the second thing I was
uses
gonna
for
say, I don't know, and I don't know if Bill or Barry, how do you even go about doing a study like that? I mean, is it a $1,000 thing? Is it a $100,000 thing? Is it with a real estate firm? Is it with a, I don't even know. Does anybody have any idea?
No, but this conversation isn't new. We've had this conversation multiple times over the years. And, it always seemed like, boy, we're building a lot of these things, but the day you build them, they're full. Tony's thoughts are if maybe 2 years from now, they won't be full.
well, some of them right now are empty apparently because they're advertising them like heck.
Yeah, and
Visit
in
here,
the
visit
past,
there.
the traffic studies were requested by us, by the developer, and they hired a fellow, I forget his name, but he was one in Rochester area that's done so many of them.
Yeah, what is that, Valone or something?
I forget his name.
Yeah.
I thought Mullen County DOT did them for us, but you
Now,
said
they
that.
do certain kinds, but this would be a different one.
But I don't know who would do it. I think we could find out. I think it'd be a matter of some realty outfit or someone, but the cost, the burden goes to the developer that's proposing it. It isn't the town has to pay for that, and that's, I believe, in our, Charlie, I think that's in our code, isn't it?
I'm sorry.
To get outside firm for a consultant on a project?
Oh, yeah, you can get, yes,
Right, so
yeah.
that's.
We put that in when we put past the 228, yeah.
Right.
But I have a question. So,
Oh, you didn't have to pay.
so that cost is put back on the developer. However, if you have this study done for one specific development, and they determine that the market does not bear any more senior housing, if the property is zoned for that senior housing, we can't really deny it because somebody did a market study that said it wasn't.
You're right, Patty, but that isn't zoned for it. That would have to be a special permit from the town board to allow that in that area.
This one,
Yes.
okay.
That's, what is that zone right there? That's
OP,
office park, yeah, OP over
it's
there.
core area north office park.
Right, and,
Which allows senior housing.
senior housing can be allowed, a limited amount of it, it explains it all in the
But
code.
there's a lot of parameters on that.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's all based on town board's approval. So based on all that, that was the reason for, feeling, before we go putting something in there like this, we want to make sure we're good with it. Who would do
I
it?
see.
I don't know what to tell you there, Tom. I guess there would have to be, we'd have to figure out who somehow, but I suppose there's probably organizations that do studies on stuff like that, I'm sure.
You know who would know, I'm thinking? Matt Chatfield.
Who?
You might.
Matt Chatfield.
Yeah, there you go.
He would have some contacts, I would
There
think.
you go.
That's an excellent idea.
I think it's just something we need to do, though, before we move forward with that project.
I'd love to do it and not have it cost anything to the town. So you had me intrigued.
What about the Center for Governmental Research? Didn't they used to do studies like this? We used to, I haven't heard about them in years, but they used to be very active in the Rochester area. They used to do a lot of studies, and they're,
Yeah.
Why don't we start with Matt?
We will, I mean, you know, my mind's thinking, you know, if we are going down the path eventually of updating the, not a master plan, I call it, but what is it, the comprehensive plan. You know, having that information would be important to the board as you go to an updated comprehensive plan, it's land use. And I don't know, I mean, if they're selling like hotcakes, and people are filling them, well, that's one factor that says maybe we can get more, but do you want more? I don't know, but you're saying there's vacancies, and, you know,
When I'm here, you can see St. Anne's and the ones over on Holt Road there, they're advertising occupancies. So that tells me that, are they all full? If they're
Those were
all
ones
so full,
that, those were ones that were full the day they opened.
Yes.
yeah, but then what happens
Yeah.
over the time? See, that's the trouble, Barry, I don't know.
People died.
Yeah, that's it. And are there more coming
You're
in?
imagining, but, and I will say, are we?
Not in this town, they don't.
You're sounding like but honestly, I think, are we comparing apples to apples? I think of a senior community of like Monarch, where St. Anne's is, that's a continuum of care, right?
Well, no, because St. Anne's also has has their cottages and that, so that's also
They do.
senior living.
Yeah, but that's independent, and then, you know.
They've got everything there.
But there's like CDS Monarch, that's just independent, right?
That's continuing developmental service, yeah, they have their own entity,
Yeah.
they're private, actually. Well, anyways, I don't want to belabor it, but that was the intent of the note to you guys.
Yeah, I'll ask Matt. It'd be interesting to get a study.
The other thing too is, then we have to look at, and this is what our board looked at, is this the right place to put something like that?
Right.
You know, you have two schools right there, you got Welling right across the street from it. You know, you've got Thomas down the road from it there. And the plan is an entirely different story that's issues with, but anyways, look at it and see what you guys think.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Well, we caught up. I don't know why, that was a misnomer that it was 6:15 then to 6:45. And I guess our last topic of the night, compliments of Councilman Cahill, who wanted to get an update on this, probably from Patty, because it'll be more succinct. A discussion, presentation on where we're at in the, well, regionalization of the sewer or the town being a separate sewer plant from the village.
Joey had something on there. You're here for something, aren't you?
I guess the reason I asked you to put it on,
Oh, okay.
should elaborate a little bit, is that I know that there's been discussions, I think we all know there's been discussions going on between the village and the town for a number of years, since the original study was done
Joe's got too much.
for a joint sewage treatment plant.
Crazy.
But I am constantly asked, especially in the village, what's going on with the sewage treatment plant? Are you guys going regional, or is the village going to be keeping their own sewage treatment plant? I know that there's a joint meeting coming up, but for those people that are not being communicated to, I thought it pertinent that we just have a brief discussion or a highlight from yourself and Patty with where we stand, and maybe you could let us know what's been going on for the last year or so almost.
So there have been meetings with both Supervisor Flaherty, myself, Mayor Byerts, and Deputy Mayor Jerry Ippolito to discuss the various aspects of regionalization, because as boards, we've all been involved in the overall presentations by the engineers. What started with the town looking to upgrade the wastewater treatment plant was phase 1, phase 2. And we had the engineering firm of Barton and LaJudas looking at that and doing the estimates. We have moved forward with phase one. And coincidentally, perhaps, I'm not sure, but the village was moving along a parallel path of spending a lot of money on upgrades for their wastewater treatment plant. And they had Labella engineers working on that. And at some point, everyone thought, well, maybe it would make sense for us to at least study and consider a regional plant, because there are 4 or 5 wastewater treatment plants in Monroe County. 2 of them are in Webster, within 5 miles of each other, if that. And both municipalities are looking at spending quite a bit of money on these upgrades. The plants are such that the village treats their own wastewater, but ultimately sends it to the town for final chlorination. And we are responsible for the speedies permit, for all of the specifications of the water that goes out into the lake at the end of the process. So any hiccup along the way can result in some very hefty fines, daily hefty fines, until that is remedied. But I digress. So when the thought of possible regionalization came about, the village agreed with the town, the 2 boards agreed to fund additional study looking at possibly what would the regionalization be. And there were a lot of things that had to be balanced out, because the village is going with an asset management plan where they're going to fix things over 10 years. And we were looking at just phase 1 and phase 2. So Barton and LaJudas did the joint study along with the engineers at Labella. They did present something, at least a year and a half or 2 years ago, I believe, and we were all able to view that. And then it languished. The village has been rather reluctant to move forward because it's a big decision for them. And ultimately, this is a village board vote. We don't vote on it at all. They would be voting to go regional and give up their wastewater treatment plant. So they were going to vote, they were going to vote, they were going to vote, they did not. And we have finished phase 1. We need to move forward with planning for phase 2. Phase 2 could look a little bit different if it went regional. There's also the opportunity for much higher grant monies that would be available for a regional approach, because the EPA and all the groups that are interested in clean water seemed to be encouraging regional approaches to this. So in an effort to move these talks forward and have the village just come to a vote, whatever it is, we know what we need to do at our plant, but we need them to make a decision. So back in, when did we start meeting? Was it before COVID or just after?
Well, it's right
Everything is either BC or
it was Martin Luther King Day, it was January 20th.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was way before.
Okay, so that's when we had our first meeting. And as I said, the 4 of us met with the engineers. No, we met just the 4 of us to say, look, we need to have a decision made here. And we had 2 or 3 subsequent meetings with the engineers to look at the numbers again and make sure that everybody understood them. The village agreed to move forward with a vote, and then COVID hit. Would that be appropriate?
Yes.
That got sidelined a little bit and went off the rails, and of course they couldn't vote because we weren't all meeting like we were supposed to. But we continued those discussions with the engineers to the point where we really feel, the 4 of us, both boards, feel it's appropriate that we put out the information for the public to see before the village takes a vote on this. And it was determined that the best way to notify everyone who is going to be primarily affected by this, it's the village user, that a card should go out to every user in the village, notifying them of this meeting that's going to be held. It's also important for our town residents to know that as well. It wasn't really feasible for us to send a card to every town user, so we have been doing our level best to put that on all the media, all of the ways we can reach, probably not the dirty dozen, but a lot of them, and let people know that this Zoom meeting is happening on August
19th.
19th, thank you. It's going to be held at 7 o'clock. And everyone who wants more information on it can tune in. The engineers, both those from Labella and those from Barton and LaJudas, will be presenting a slide presentation, informational. There will be options available for questions to be submitted to those who are on the Zoom call or the Zoom meeting. The Zoom meeting can hold 500 people. I hope we have more than 500. Those who don't RSVP in time to get their names in and registered on this Zoom meeting will be allowed to see it live streamed on Facebook. However, there won't be opportunity for comment there.
Is it Facebook or YouTube?
I think it's you, oh, it's YouTube.
I think it was Facebook.
I mean, it's YouTube.
Oh, somebody telling us?
Hello?
The information is in the
Postcard.
post on it. It's on the postcard, yes.
Postcards went out when?
Did they go out middle of this week?
I wish Karen would peek her head out, because I think
Karen, can you help
the
us?
latest they'll hit a,
There she comes. Is it YouTube or is it Facebook first? YouTube, I'm sorry, I misspoke. And do you know when the cards went out? Okay. Didn't mean to put you on the spot with you. Okay. I think we were hoping to get them out by the weekend. Yeah.
Thanks, Karen.
So there have been no decisions made. And that's where we stand. Does that answer all of your questions
Yeah.
or concerns?
I was just, 'cause I know some questions were, people were asking, well, what's going on with the Speedies permit if they stay with their own?
I'm going to let the
Super
supervisor
treatment
speak to
plan.
that.
I don't know if you even want to comment on that. I just wanted to
well,
throw that out there and.
First of all, Patty, I think you did a great job summarizing it up, and Bill, you'll appreciate, we would have been here for 3 hours had you had me summarize it up, right?
I think we all agree with that.
You guys owe Patty. Also, like the fact that John and Patty are the ones that have been on the screen about this, because John and Patty are village residents. So it's also important
Right.
to you as village residents, and I've always appreciated the sensitivity of that as we went down this path. But Patty did a good job explaining the Speedies permit. It comes from the Department of Environmental DEC. And I don't know how this happened, but years ago the town got the permit, and the village tagged on to our permit. And then, like Patty said, if there's ever any problems at the plant or that the water quality going out in the lake isn't good, regardless of whose fault it is, town or village, the town is on the nut for $35,000 a day right now of penalties, which is $1 million a month. If it's shown that it was the village's plant that caused the problem, we have an intermunicipal agreement where they would reimburse us for that. Indemnify us for that, I guess, right, Charlie?
Yeah, I guess it'd be.
I looked at that and I thought, to me, and I'm the outsider coming in, I'm like, that's the craziest thing I ever heard in my life. That is the ultimate, I felt like being our brother's keeper. And I said, I talked to Patty about it. I said, I don't think that if the village ends up having their own plant going forward, God bless them, that's their decision. But I do not think the town, and certainly we've been elected to be leaders of the town and make decisions not only for 2020, but 20 years from now. I'm not comfortable with the town having the Speedies permit for the village. If we don't have any control of how they run their sewer plant, then we could get that fine, and plus, we don't have any control as a town board of how they run their finances. So, 10 years from now, when the whole board is different at the town and at the village, if the village ever ran into a financial problem and they can't pay the $1 million fine, I just don't, I can't endorse that. We're making decisions for 20 years from now. It's not like, oh, do I trust Mayor Byers? Yes. Mayor Byers not going to be in that position in 10 years. I don't know who that next mayor is going to be. So that was my foundational aspect of why, if the village board decides to go their own route in a couple of weeks when they vote, that's fine. I've made it very clear I don't keep my cards close to the vest on this one. I think it's a mistake. I'm a numbers guy. The numbers, it just doesn't make any sense to have 2 sewer plants in 35 square miles when Patty said there's only 3 other sewer plants in the whole county.
Right, and that situation is unique in the entire state, by the way.
Well, it's also unique that we hold the Speedies permit for the village.
Yes.
Anyway, I saw it as just doing our job as the town board for today and the future. And I hope that the village board appreciates that decision and doesn't see it as, anything but that. This is not a punitive thing. It is just, hey, we were hired to protect the town, I think, Bill and Barry, right? I mean, isn't that what we were hired to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. And that to me was part of it. I will say this, I think at least 8 months in, Jerry Ippolito is the deputy mayor.
Correct.
Mayor Byers, Patty, it would be very difficult not to get along with Patty. We get along, and I hope that is a sign of things to come, because really the village government and the town government, with some of the things that got to happen in this community, especially with Xerox sitting over there and some of the things, we got to act as a team. I agree. Whatever happened in the past, Hatfield, McCoy-esque between the village and the town and all that stuff, okay, but we really need to act together as a team for this community over the next 20 years, because read my article, the Supervisor's Corner article today. We got town and village lines that go through the middle of buildings at Xerox. Figure that out. So town and village got to get together and work those things out so that 770 acres over at Xerox has an opportunity to get to the next point of development. And I won't read back yet, but look, I'm nostalgic. I'd love to see that Xerox campus fill up with industry, with Xerox, and they rejuvenate themselves and fill all those buildings and hire all these people. I just don't think that's going to happen with Xerox. So it's going to be somebody else. And we better prepare as a community that 770-acre campus so it can draw in a diversity of businesses. And the only way we're going to do that is if the town and the village work together as a team. And to me, that starts with having a regionalized sewer plant.
Well, the other thing is that this regional approach is one that is looking forward to the future. It's not what is my EDU cost next year or 5 years. It's what's better for the community and what will it be eventually. And most communities who have gone regional, and they will provide charts that show this, the engineers will show this, that over time, as you go into the lifespan of the project, it does become more cost efficient to the individual user to have a regional approach. But it's like you talk about Xerox, like you talk about future planning and partnerships, this is something that we're looking at for future.
Well, and I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I'm going to say this because I've said it in meetings. I'll probably say it a lot over the next couple of weeks as the village leads up to their vote. I guess I get it from what I've been told, that if the village lost their water 10 years ago, that there's a feeling that if they lose their sewer plant, that it's a nail in the coffin of the village government. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I'd see it totally different than that. In that, for better or for worse, in 2020, this is a town that has 46,000 plus people. 5,000 of them are in the village, 41,000 in the town. That's significantly different than 30, 40 years ago, when we had probably 20,000 people in the town, and they were maybe more farmer-esque. Farmers sold their land, developers came in and built $300,000 houses. Whether you like it or not, the essence of this community now is more socioeconomically on the higher end. We're closer to a Pittsford in the town than we are to a farm town. And I hope that doesn't get people angry. That's just the way it is. You go build $300,000 subdivisions, you're bringing in families that are socioeconomically on the higher end. Now the village, first of all, this town board has enough to do on their plate than to take over the workings and things in the village. I truly believe the village government should focus their time and energy in the future on developing the village to be the nucleus hub of this community. My wife and I have 7 kids. We live about 2 miles from downtown. I'd rather get on my bike, walk, drive downtown and spend my discretionary money in Webster than cross the Bay Bridge and go 10, 15 miles over to someplace else. And the village's tax base, correct me if I'm wrong, is 60% sales tax. So they have every incentive in the world to build downtown. Focus your time and energy on downtown because you have 41,000 people in the town that can come in. It's a win for both communities, which is one community. The village benefits because if they make it a robust downtown, we're going to go, this side of the table who lives in the town, by the way,
If we let you in.
our guys and us are going to go downtown and spend our money. That's sales tax for the village.
We're gonna walk there and see it.
You got it. I fucking walk there. We're going to park in your driveway. I guess maybe I'm the crazy one. Forget about what you've lost. Look at the benefit that you now can focus your time and energies on this next 20 years of building this. It's a unique village situation to any of the other 10 villages in Monroe County. It just is. If you go and look at the demographics, they have an opportunity to make that village really the hub of what I think is the best town in Monroe County, Webster.
Yes.
So go and do it. And I'd love to help with that as long as I still, am the supervisor. But I'll get out of my soapbox now, Bill. Wow. Is the water done? Are we done? Okay. Does anybody else have anything they want to say?
Thank you.
No, you've said it all.
When I get okay, I'm going to get you for Christmas that hook. Remember in Vaudeville they had the hook?
I don't know if they make one big enough for you.
You guys laugh. You know what?
This is a tough crowd. This is a tough
I don't need to do that. Throw this at him is what I should do.
I like the old hay hooks.
You know what?
I stuck one of those.
Thanks for coming.